It's been a long time, everyone, that I've been wanting to make this video. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time. I'm going to be talking about the LSS001 promo card, or the Rudy the Gem Keeper card. And I wanted to go into details about it and tell you what my thoughts are of the whole thing that transpired, of the game and the sale and the negativity and, all of that stuff, man, and answer a lot of questions. Before I get into it, though, I do want to show you the cards that I received. So I purchased two from Rudy directly. I thought it would be fitting to put it in a secret layer, the Walking Dead box. Now, I got this box through another transaction of Flesh and Blood cards. A person put the fab cards in there and shipped them out to me, and I just kept the box. And what do you know? It holds two Rudy Gemkeeper boxes, just perfectly. And I just like the poetic nature of it all, it's very fitting. And it fits perfectly in here. And I don't know if there's any conspiracy to that. No, man, it's just a box. It is what it is. I mean, this is just a coincidence, guys. But there's a lot of poetic nature to this. And I honestly really do cherish these cards. I cherish them especially because, apparently, the last video that I made about this card, I'm not sure if you're aware, but after, a couple hours of it being uploaded, Rudy, thought it would be a good idea to take that link of my previous video and paste it and email out all of his patrons telling them, hey, this Bronson guy is onto something. There's something more to this whole Rudy promo card that meets the eye. And that was extremely nice of him. I mean, I'm just very humbled. I'm just a normal guy here. I'm no one special here. And having a legend in the TCG industry, give me a shout out like that was very humbling. So, I really appreciate it. And I mean, at the end of the day, I got pretty much everything wrong. I mean, basically, I was just shotgunning like different thoughts and opinions and conspiracy theories at the whole, mess. But I missed all my bullets, man. But the only thing I did is I knew that there was a target out there to hit. So, for him to do that was just, I don't know, he didn't have to do that. It was very kind of him. And, I just wanted to discuss the whole thing now that it's happened. And, to give you a minor summary of everything that transpired is, Rudy went out into the public, said, hey, I'm going to play a game. We're going to sell these. He's going to sell these cards for $1,000 each. And he's not going to tell who bought or who didn't. And after the sale, a little over 1,300 people purchased them, which is a hell of a lot more than I thought. I mean, that's very close to the 1,500 print run that was already existed. And then basically all the ones that didn't sell, which is like 150-ish, he was going to burn. But after the whole sale transpired and after my video, he said, hey, actually, the people who purchased any LSS001 promo cards in that sale, your account has been flagged, and going forward, you're going to get like a small $69 rebate. And that was the whole thing that was behind the thing that I, missed all my shotgun bullets. But, that really is just the summary of all this stuff. He burned the cards recently. That was very interesting to see, and there was a little clip there at the end, but that's the whole story. But something still doesn't feel right to me. I think that there's a little bit more depth to this. There's a little bit more than meets the eye. And to start off discussing a bunch of these topics, I want to discuss something that I was majorly wrong on, and that is when Rudy got into Flesh and Blood. I had previously said Rudy got into Flesh and Blood in early 2020 when he ran his alpha product sale, but that's completely false. If you were an astute viewer and if you were an astute person and you actually took the LSS001 card, right, and you like Googled it and you looked at the collectability center on the Fab TCG site, you'll see that it was printed in August 2019. And if you're even a more big brain individual, you'll remember that the 2-year anniversary of Flesh and Blood is for when Alpha Welcome to Wrath was printed, which is in October 2019. And then if you are a just gigantic brained individual, you'll realize, and you do this math, this month math, right? And August and October, August is before October. So what that means is Rudy's card was printed before Alpha woke him to Wrath. And when I learned that, when I thought about that back in the day, that's just shocking, man, that Rudy got into Flesh and Blood before the first Alpha print set, before the set was even out, which is just shocking to me. And it just really makes you think, when did Rudy get into Flesh and Blood? And I would hate to speculate further, but from the datas that we have, August 2019 is where we're at, is when the card got printed. But you also have to take into consideration, the card, itself needs to be thought out and what the effects of it. The artist needs to draw the card. And then, also they have to figure out what is going to be drawn on the card. And not only was it Rudy himself on the card in some, fashion on the chair, but he had all these gems around him, man. And not only that, he had the Arknight shard, which wasn't even printed yet, or wasn't even going to be printed until late 2020. So, there's a lot of things that are gone into the printing of that card in August 2019 that you really have to ask yourself, how early was Rudy in Flesh and Blood? Was it March? Was it April-ish? I mean, it takes a long time to make that card art. But not only that, it had to come to a point where James White thought, hey, Rudy's done a lot for my game. I would like to make a promo card for him because he's helped me with my game. And it just makes me think, like, how many months transpired before August 2019 before, it was printed and it was decided on that. So, that's still something that is really something on my mind. And then, another big question that I've had over, the course of the last month is, why was the card released so late? So if you'll remember, August 2019 is when it was created, but then it was distributed out to the public through this, Rudy game a couple months ago in 2021. And I thought about it for a while, and it didn't really make sense until I remembered the Arknight shard. The Arknight shard wasn't printed as a physical card until Crucible War in late 2020. So he waited from 2019 to 2020, late 2020. But if you remember what happened in Q4 2020 as well, the market spiked for Flesh and Blood super hard, and everything was just fucking crazy. You had Whale saying, "Whale, hello there." You had like all these different individuals buying up a bunch of stuff. You just had the market was absolutely nuts. So selling the card into that hype wouldn't have been the best idea. Things were just too crazy. So he waited until 2021 most likely. That's what I can figure of what happened with this card. And then at the time, the card is expensive because all the market hype in 2020. And that really kind of answered it. And the main thing is the Arknight shard. He couldn't release the card immediately in early 2020 when he did the alpha set because that card wasn't printed yet. It would kind of like spoil that thing. So we kind of had to wait. And then the one thing I want to delve into now is the cost. Why was the Rudy promo kit, the LSS001 promo, why was it $1,000? That's a lot of money, right? And before, I said it was to, create this whole thing of negativity and advertisements and all that. And, people do that. And I don't think that's the reason anymore. I think that that's a secondary reason for the price, and it helped. And of course, he leaned into that shit very hard. But I think that's really misdirection. I think the primary reason for the card price of being $1,000 is because he wanted to dissuade people from purchasing the card. And he wanted only people who believed in the game, believed in him, to get the card, and they will get it. Because he knew he was going to hook them up later with the rebate. And if you think about this logically, and you say, well, Bronson, he could have sold them for $500 each and still made a lot of money. He would have made $500,000 instead of $1 million. He would have been great. Well, if you've been his Patreon for a while, man, you've realized his Flesh and Blood shit, like especially the first edition stuff back in 2020 and early 2021, it sells out in like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And that's an issue because that's just like not a really good environment, and it says, hey, your price is wrong. But overall, if he put it for $500, right? And that's what I've heard so many different people say, like, oh, he could have just done half the price and still made a lot of money. That is true, but it would have sold out in like 4 to 7 minutes. There's no way that thing would have pushed 10 minutes of being on the market for $500, especially since 1,300 of the Patreons or the patrons bought it at $1,000. So if you think if it was 500 or 600, it would have just been sold like that, and like most of the people would just flip because they didn't care. And you're not rewarding loyalty. You're not rewarding people who actually give a shit. And if you think about it like that, it really makes sense that these cards, the bundle, the little LSS box, right, that it was sold for $1,000, because at the end of the day, it did prevent a lot of people from pulling the trigger and buying them because the price was very high. And giving a rebate afterwards in the near future really does give that money back, and it makes the card price too where it would be like $500 or $400. And honestly too, if you really look at the market, it's not really far off from $1,000. I mean, the MetaZoo card for the MetaZoo card for Rudy, right? At that time, at the time of the sale a couple months ago, it was selling for like $600. So this is not only the the Rudy promo card or Flesh and Blood, but it also is the box, and it's like all the other cards of the gems. It's a nice little kit. So I mean, even if it's like 700, 800, even if it's overpaid by 200, it's pretty rare. So all in all, man, I just want to sum up the whole price thing. Is the price was not meant to, in my opinion, the price was not meant to really cause negativity or stir emotions or make other, content creators talk about this and gain a lot of hype. I think the primary reason for the price was because if it was priced any lower, it would have sold out in seconds. People would just flip it and not care. In this scenario, and it would basically only, like, all the cards would just go to the patrons with the fastest internet speed, who didn't really, give a shit, and it would just sell on eBay. Whereas now, all the cards went to people who trusted him, as in, hey, this guy, I've had deals with this guy. He, hooks me up at the end, and I really love the game of Flesh and Blood, and I want the card. So all in all, I think it was a smart play. If you think so or not. Now, overall, even though we've heard a lot of things, and things seems like the dust have settled with this card, and everything, is wrapped up in a nice little bow with the whole flaming of the whole cards and all this stuff, and, the whole thing with the, is me or not me, and I think that there's still more to this card. I think there's more depth and reasoning behind it. Because if you think about my original question of when Rudy initially got into Flesh and Blood, before Alpha set, and he had the gems on the card, the Fable gems, that are the most important cards in the game, it makes you think, what else is there to this? And the theory I have of why this is like this is that, Rudy, the man himself, I think, has been a model for the hero Viserai in Flesh and Blood. That is my big, wrapped up in a bow conspiracy theory that kind of explains a lot of shit. And before I go into detail of that, right, before I give you my breadcrumbs, I want to just give a huge disclaimer and put you into focus, is that Flesh and Blood lore is completely different than real life. Real life is completely separate from lore. It's just sometimes what Legend Story Studios does is they take real life figures and they take their personality and maybe their image and they take them and they put it in characters in the lore for Flesh and Blood. And Flesh and Blood has done this in the past. If you look at Bolton, which is a character in Monarch, he is modeled after Usain Bolt, a athletic runner in the Olympics. And basically, Bolton has like the charge mechanic, like jumping forward, and Usain Bolt is the runner. So you can see how the personality and characteristics are taken from real life, but put into a completely different character who is a separate entity. And also, this was done in Welcome to Wrath that we know of. James White has said that he modeled Dorinthia after his grandmother or aunt. I forgot which. I'm sorry about that. But one of them, basically somebody really important in his life, he took characteristics and put into Dorinthia. And I think they did this. I think James White did the same thing for Viserai. And I'm going to get into the, little points that I have here. But before I get into that, I also want to say is, patterns and different little breadcrumbs don't mean like that it's a thing. I could be chasing the wrong rabbit tail here, guys. As you saw in my last video, I got almost every conspiracy theory wrong. So this is just something that that's just going through my mind, and we'll see how it plays out. So my first big thing, right? My first big evidence is when Rudy had his like Arcane Rising video back in the day. Viserai was the hero that he spoiled. He got a cold foil version of Viserai, and he got like the Viserai poster, So it would be fitting, if he's previewing the card to the world, that it would be one that he's based off of, And then another thing is, I know I've talked about how the personality traits of the people in real life are in the people of Flesh and Blood. And if you think about Viserai, so if you're not aware, Viserai is a dude who basically got captured by this guy, Lord Sutcliffe, right? And Lord Sutcliffe kind of like brainwashed Viserai and had him doing all this like killing for him. But then Viserai kind of rose up and killed Lord Sutcliffe, and then he's his own guy, and it's assumed that he's kind of like this anti-hero. Like, he's a good guy. It's weird, too, because you think he looks bad because he has this, death blade and all this shit, but he's actually a good guy at the end of the day. So he's really this anti-hero thing. And isn't Rudy that kind of guy? Isn't he the anti-hero here? I mean, he's telling us he's scamming us directly to his face. Like, on the surface, he looks like, this really sketch guy on the internet. But then, behind the surface, behind closed doors, he's a pretty nice guy. So he kind of plays the anti-hero role as well. So that's kind of like my main, correlation there. And then another big piece of evidence, man, is the artist. The artist for Viserai is Steve Argyle, a very popular Magic the Gathering artist. And he did Liliana of the Veil. And Rudy has talked about that card a lot and loving that card. And isn't it fitting that Steve Argyle would make a character? Since he's a Magic the Gathering artist, he was commissioned to make a character that was embodiment of Rudy. And there's something there, man. And then, another thing is, if you look at the young Viserai, right? It was done by someone not of Steve Argyle, which is very rare for Flesh and Blood. If you look at all the artists for all of the hero cards, usually an artist will do both the adult hero, young hero, adult hero, young hero. You very rarely have different artists for the adult and the young hero, which you have in this case. Someone else did the young hero for Viserai. But another thing that is also cool is if you look at the young hero of Viserai, he does resemble Rudy. Because in the adult version, you can't see the face. But for the young version, you can see, the black hair, and it's a man. So, there's even more evidence there, man. And like, another thing, and going forward, I'm going to give you some like really far out breadcrumbs, man. These are like the smallest, minuscule breadcrumbs. I'm really digging deep down the rabbit hole right with these at the end here. So if you look at the picture of young Viserai on the FabTCG site, you'll notice that the image name is Malcor. And this was told to me by Kale from Dead Summer Art. I'll put a link down below to his channel. But basically, he made a video about it, basically saying the young version could be named Malcor. But maybe, my thought process is, maybe Malcor was the original name instead of Viserai. But because, certain circumstances, they changed up the name for Viserai and named it Viserai. There's something to that. And the last part is I want to go into the name meaning, because it is kind of odd to me that Viserai has like the word choice, and not only that, the Rudy card. I don't know why it doesn't say RUDY, the Gem Keeper. It says RUUDI. And that, I found that very strange. And I tried to look at anagrams and all this bullshit, but at the end of the day, I couldn't really figure it out. But I do see some symbolism in a way for Viserai. So let's look at the core of the word Viserai. I think it comes from the base word of viscera, which is VISCERA. And essentially what they did with this word is they took out the middle part, right? Which is the C. And then they replaced the ending of it with an I. And if you think about Viserai overall, what happened is his inner parts got pulled out, and they put in, Lord Sutcliffe put in the Arknight Shard in there. And if you think of the word Viserai, they did the same thing. They pulled out the C and they put an I in at the end. And what's interesting too about that, the naming Viserai, is look at the last two digits. AI, maybe for Alpha Investments. And I know I'm really stretching there. I know I'm really going down the rabbit hole, but it's just a little bit more stuff. And something else too is Viserai, if you look at the lore page of Flesh and Blood, it says that the thing on the top of his face is a visor, and he glows pink. So maybe that was like a reference to the pink visor Rudy has in his, promo or his financial videos, right? I know that's really stretching as well, but I mean, it says it's a visor. And then I think the last thing I want to talk about is before you get to the Rudy promo card in the box, it comes in this black sleeve. And if you look at the gem symbol on that, right? If you look at Viserai's face mask, you do see some kind of gem outline that looks very similar to that was done in the Steve Argyle art. And yeah, that's all my little breadcrumbs here for you. But it kind of does make sense to me. I mean, if Flesh and Blood, if Legend Story Studios wanted to make an LSS001 promo card for Rudy, why would they put in all the gems there? Why would they put all this stuff? Especially the Arknight Shard. It was not even going to be released for another year. There's something more to that card. I stand by that. There's something deeper here. And the big thing too that, when I looked at the card, Rudy's holding the Arknight Shard in his hand. That is what is in Viserai. So it would be so fitting, he's looking at the Arknight Shard, meaning like, hey, he's looking at the character that was created for him in a way. That's my idea. That's the kind of poetic stuff with this. And, maybe that's why the cards were burned, because like Viserai has like this burning power with his rune chants, but that's getting even more crazy down the line. But it's just very fascinating to me, this whole thing, and I think it played out how it should. And it's funny how after the news was so like hype the first week, and then afterwards it really died down. It really died out, but it's just a really cool piece of Flesh and Blood history. And love him or hate him, you have to realize and ask yourself the question of like, how early was he in this game? And it's easy for people right now in 2021 or even 2020 to just say, hey, I love Flesh and Blood, it's great, and I'm so on board, and I love it to the moon. But supporting it then versus supporting it in 2019 when it literally had like, just the Ira Welcome deck is a whole nother thing. And for him to just, have communication with the company and and help out during that critical period of time of, you know, birthing this thing into existence is a pretty big deal. And it really does blow my mind that he was in the game before the alpha edition, and I'd be interested to hear when he actually got into the game and think about like what he did to impact it in its early phase. That's about it. Thanks for watching.